Awesome. Okay, so I am here. This is the second Hawaii Tableau user group event that we have done. And we're doing it hybrid, so in person and virtually. So thank you to the virtual people who could make it today. The virtual attendees are attending from 12 to 1. So we're gonna get started. I'm with Steve Freeland and he's joining us. He's with Tableau and he focuses on the financial vertical industry. And Zach Morris, Demo, is presenting for us today. But I will turn it over to Steve, who will introduce Zach. So Steve, over to you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any audio output. Dana, are we all good?
Yeah, they can.
They can hear?
I think
Okay, all right, perfect. Looks like Zemo, you can hear me, all right? Give me a thumbs up, perfect. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties over here. As long as everyone online can hear what we're saying, that's great. Feel free to raise your hand or type into the chat if you've got a question, and we can field those for you. But like Dana said, I'm Steve. I'm with Tableau. I support the financial services vertical here, but the content we're going to be talking about is going to be really segment agnostic. So you could take this away to your various lines of business. Excited to be out here on the islands, and sorry we couldn't meet everyone. Hopefully we can all connect soon. But Zemo here is my solution engineer. He's based out of the Seattle, Washington area, and sadly he couldn't be on site with us, but he's put together some really engaging content around data storytelling and being better data storytellers and getting your content consumed by wider audiences and some best practices and such. So let me hand it over rather to Zemo, and I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Zemo. Nice to meet you. Let me get my screen shared and set up, and we will jump right in. All right, Steve, can you give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen?
Hold on, Zemo. We're having some audio issues on our end.
Are you still having some audio issues, Steve?
Yeah, we're
Got it. Just check in, Steve. Are we good? You might be on mute, Steve.
Zemo, I'm here.
Okay, can you hear me?
So we can't hear you through the audio in the room very
Mhm.
well, so we're probably gonna have to use our laptops at each table. Give me just 2 minutes here, hold on.
You're good.
Timo, can you give me a audio test?
Yeah, testing. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. All right, we might have a workaround, just a couple seconds, hold on.
Yeah, you're good. Test. Just giving one more test before we get started.
Timo, can you try sound check?
Yep, just testing to see if you can hear me. Testing to see if you can hear me.
Hey, can you hear me all? Just testing the sound one more time.
Yeah, we can only hear you on the laptop. So what we're gonna do here is, Zemo, we're going to watch from the presentation, but my laptop's gonna be our mic / audio. So
Okay.
all right, so why don't you give me All right.
Are we good to go?
All right, I think we're good to go, Zemo.
Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Zemo. I figured I would start this off by giving you a little bit of an overview of who I am before jumping into my presentation, just to get to connect with you a little bit since I, unfortunately couldn't be there in person. I go by Zemo. That's my preferred name. I am a solution engineer at Tableau, and I've been here about 3.5 years so far. My Tableau forte is designing effective and efficient dashboards. I come from a variety of jobs and places of employment before Tableau, but at its core, my education was in public relations and communications. So I very much understand the importance of visual design and communicating effectively, and fell in love with Tableau because of its ability to do so. I'm a solution engineer by day. I'm a mixologist by night. I work at a bar here in Seattle called Rumba. It's one of the world's most innovative rum bars. We have over 705 bottles. So at night you can catch me slinging drinks there. I'm also a dog dad to the beautiful mini Australian Shepherd that you see in the photo on the bottom right. His name is Nova. He is the ripe age of 10 months old. So he is an absolute menace. Don't let the cuteness fool you.
Hey, Zemo,
Yeah.
we don't see your screen yet.
We gotta see the dog.
Oh, you don't? Oh my gosh. I'm over here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we will just restart all of that. Give me 1 second. I was so focused. There we go. I was so focused on the audio that I wasn't even thinking about the the screen sharing. Okay, cool. So you can see my screen, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is me, Zemo, again. My dog Nova is on the bottom right. I live in Seattle currently, but spent the majority of my youth and young adulthood growing up in the great state of West Virginia. So in the top right, you'll see a little bit of a slice of almost heaven, West Virginia, where I'm from. That's the New River Gorge Bridge. I grew up about 15 minutes away from it, and it is the longest single arch bridge on the Western Hemisphere. Pretty cool. Some of my passions include being up and watching the sunrise, R&B music. I'm an avid reader. I'm a captain of a LGBTQ kickball team here in Seattle, and I also can kick major butt at Mario Kart. So that's just a little bit about who I am before we jump into the topics for today. I don't think I'll be talking about any future particular products today, but I did want to give a quick reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and customers should base their purchasing decisions on products and services that are currently available, just in case we do get into any roadmap or future product items. I didn't want to, not include this. Okay, so the first topic that we're going to really hop into today is some best practices for dashboard creation. And before I really dive into this, I'm not there, and I haven't had a chance to meet with you all individually, and I don't really know where everybody is coming to Tableau from, whether we are net new and we're here trying to learn some techniques, or whether we've been dashboarding since Tableau was created in 2003. But I wanted to pull together some concepts and sort of allow you to use them, take them back with you, to inform how you decide to create dashboards for your business or for your personal enjoyment. And so I wanted to start with sort of the purposes of a dashboard that we mostly see. The first and foremost, a dashboard has to answer some kind of question. Secondly, it needs to foster some sort of action. A common design question I would ask customers during POCs is, if I'm showing you X, Y, and Z, what action is this going to drive? And if my customers can't give me a great answer, then it probably doesn't really need to be on the dashboard. Or if it does still need to be on the dashboard for some reason, maybe there's a better place for us to put it. And the third one is, a dashboard should foster more questions. No dashboard can or should answer all questions. Bad dashboards make you ask questions like, wait, what does this mean? Is this right? Can I trust this? And those aren't the questions that we really want to be talking about. Good dashboards make you ask questions like, this is interesting, now I'm wondering about this or that, and then the real analytical journey begins. No one's ever walked by a dashboard and suddenly said, aha, there's my $1 million insight. Rather, they saw something interesting, had a question, and started probing a bit more. And with these concepts in mind, we're going to dive a bit deeper into the two primary types of dashboards that we see business users and end users create. The first is the concept of exploratory dashboards. These are typically designed with a lot of interactivity and little direction. Outside of the topic area, often we see designers creating these with the goal of inspiring end users to explore the data on their own, come to their own conclusions, and discover or come up with the questions that they want to continue asking of the data. And the example that I've shown here is from Boeing's commercial market outlook. I've highlighted 4 different areas on this dashboard, all of which indicate ways an end user could interact with it and explore different visualizations based on their interests. And just to give you a little bit more context, this forecast provides a 20-year outlook for the commercial the commercial airplane deliveries and the evolution of Boeing's global fleet. So end users can come to this publicly available outlook and they can explore metrics and analysis about the growth of passengers or the air cargo traffic. They could navigate visuals to see the industry evolution by different market segments. And they could even, if they wanted to, compare regional dynamics and analysis, which might be unique to different operating environments. Overall, this is what I would consider an A+ example of an exploratory dashboard. And the second is explanatory dashboards. These ones often remove filters and fluff. They try to ensure the visualizations really just speak for themselves and don't leave any room for misinterpretation or misunderstanding. These 2 particular dashboards are ones that I made myself. They're both from Makeover Monday, and anybody who has been around in Tableau for a while might know what that is. It was a weekly showcase that used to run where the organizers would provide a small data set, and they would also provide a visualization. Typically, the visualization was poor or poorly designed, and the challenge to participants was to improve the visualization to get straight to the point without being overly complicated in design or technical approach. The first one that I have on the screen examines how much of a person's life has been, the first one examines how much of a person's life has the United States been at war with another country. The dates at the bottom reflect years that individuals were born, and it might be a little hard to see depending on how far the screen is from you, but if you were born in 2001 or after, then pretty much 100% of your life has been during a time at which the US has been at war. So it gets pretty straight to the point. The second visualization highlights the change in beliefs surrounding same-sex couples and sexual relations. The point this visualization makes is the number of people aged 18 to 34 have been increasingly open and more supportive of these types of relationships over the past 50 years. So now I want to talk about not so great examples of dashboarding. And the point of this one is it's too cluttered and there's too much going on. When I look at this dashboard, I am very much reminded of like young Zemo who, was using computers at school for the first time and just went crazy with PowerPoints and, Microsoft Paint. And I think if Tableau had existed when I was 8, and if it was something that I was learning in school, this is exactly what I would have produced, right? Big numbers, inconsistent color. There's a lot of sizing issues, fonts, there's no explanations. If we dive in a little bit here, like I see there's this bubble chart. Okay, that's cute, that's cool. But like, what is it telling me? It just says beautiful chart. I can see here, I've got days and months, but I don't really know what blue means versus orange. So there's a lot of inconsistency and no explanations. And obviously this isn't something that we would probably produce and put in front of our business stakeholders or, the people at the top, but this is just an example of how poorly a dashboard can sort of be designed when we don't have intentionality in the process. And this is a far improvement on the previous one. They're not the same data sources. I think the previous one was actually based on Superstore and meant to look bad. But this one is an employee attrition dashboard. And you can see that there is, really consistent coloring. The labels are clearly defined. We've got some segments here. And we even have a explanation at the top that sort of says, hey, end user, here's how you should, use this, or here is how you should interpret like what you're seeing. But I would even go as far to say that this is still a bit cluttered, just by virtue of having so many bar charts on one dashboard. I had to zoom out of Tableau Public when I was taking the screenshot because this is actually so long that I couldn't keep it on one screen. And so sometimes that's an indication that what we're trying to do is just a little too much. Now, I like to take the approach when I'm dashboarding of plan like a designer, think like an end user. So it doesn't take a visualization expert to see that, we're not using color effectively in this particular dashboard. Everything on this dashboard is like highly saturated and bright. And the end user is probably going to have an issue when they look at this because they're not really going to know where to look first. The first problem that we have is we have used color to encode two different elements on this dashboard, customer segment and profitability. And so when used intentionally, color can be pretty powerful, but here I don't think it's being used intentionally at all. We should be picking one color to mean one thing and only one thing on the dashboard. And we should repeat that color throughout the visualizations. And since this dashboard is about profitability, we'll do that. I'm going to show you an example of how this can be transformed and beautified at the end. But the other problem with color is, anywhere from 5 to 10% of the population is colorblind. And Tableau does have a colorblind palette that avoids reds and greens. Labels can also help, especially in tooltips. But if you use it, you have to make sure your audience knows what color means. And you have to make sure that those who can't see it can access the extra dimension and depth that color encoding can bring to your visualization. So what I've done is I have brought a set of colors or hues that I took from a color wheel, and these are all pretty saturated at the top, right? They're a little intense when looking at them now, these four up at the top. But if we bring down the saturation, like in the second row, it softens it a bit. We can still easily distinguish each of them, but there's less jumping out at you, and it's really easier on the eye. However, the smaller the area gets, the harder it is for us to distinguish between colors. Personally, this blue and this green start to get pretty hard for me to differentiate between. But if we keep the same width of this bar that we've got going, but we bring up that saturation again, then it's a lot easier for us to see those different colors. So the key takeaway here is use less saturated colors for coding large areas. Use because highly saturated colors like these ones that take up a lot of space can cause visual tension. And then we want to use more saturated colors down at the bottom for small symbols, thin lines, or other small areas. So they're pretty easy to identify. And we also have to be really intentional about the emotions that can be associated with specific colors, depending on what we're trying to communicate. So you should always choose color mindfully, always tying it back to what you're trying to say. We use color to convey meaning and evoke emotion, and this can vary between demographics and cultures. So it's really important to keep this in mind and choose a color palette that is semantically resonant with what information that you're trying to show. If you're going to report on casualties in the Middle East, you're probably going to want to choose a different color palette than if you were reporting on different tulip varieties around the state of Washington. So being able to reference that color wheel can really help you understand how the use of related or opposite colors can create mood or emotion in what you're building. On the right side here, I have actually included an example of the Stroop effect, which is the delay in reaction time between congruent and incongruent stimuli. So to test this, try to say the color you see in the word, not the word, and you'll pick up on how hard or how difficult that can be. And if you need inspiration for color palettes, something that I have always found useful is going to Pinterest. And if I have been designing something fun, I will search for something adjacent, like if I wanted to make something like cotton candy related or like, very carnival themed, I would probably go to Pinterest, search for an infographic that is along those same lines, and then pop that infographic into a color generator, take the color palette and pop it back into Tableau. And if we have time at the end, I can also show you that process because it's super easy. Okay, so here is what that same dashboard look that we saw at first looks like, with using one color for profitability and being a bit more intentional about how we use it. This is also a great example where the orange and blue is great for accessibility, but it's also great because it is a stark contrast to the blue. So if we take something like profit ratio, which is being displayed in this particular visualization, if it was sales instead of profit or profit ratio, like sales is never going to be a number that is negative because that's typically not how that field or value works. But profit ratio or profit can be a negative value. So having something that can go below 0 and sort of like get brighter as it gets, worse, or like as the number falls, is like super, super helpful for being able to point out the differences between the values. Okay, now I want to move in a little bit to becoming a better data storyteller. And I promise I'm not going to talk about like, Cinderella or Prince Charming or any of that, but how can we make intentional decisions to be a better storyteller within the dashboarding and visualization process? And again, we're going to start with really the 3 purposes of storytelling. The first one is stories allow us to make sense of the world around us and use this information to guide our actions. The second one is when we hear a story, we typically look for places to relate to it. It really helps our attention span, and it also helps us feel like we could see ourselves in the story. And when we do that, when we find that relationship, we lean on the outcome to help guide our own decision-making processes. And we trust that based on what we've heard and what we've seen, and we hopefully expect the same or similar outcomes for our experiences. And third, storytelling is a fundamental piece of the human experience. When we uncover stories, we are typically eliciting emotions that are based on the response or based on how they resonate with us. An example of this in a modern day tech company is every year Spotify releases a Spotify Wrapped, which is a personalized year-end music summary of like the past year. And it's always funny for me when I reflect on my own Spotify Wrapped, it allows me to reconnect with the songs that have been like the soundtrack of my year. And more holistically, it helps me understand how I've made it through the year in music. So I always appreciate, that ability of Spotify to take data and make it super personal for an end consumer, even though I'm not, using Tableau dashboards in Spotify. And in the context of Tableau, before you start to build your stories, it's very recommended to take some time and think about the purpose of it and what you really want that viewer's journey to be. Do you want them, when they look at your story or your dashboard, do you want them to have a call to action? Is it a simple narrative? Are you presenting a case for why something should change or stay the same? And if you're presenting a case, decide whether you want to present data points that lead up to a conclusion at the end, or start with a conclusion and then show the supporting data points behind it. The latter approach works really well for a business audience, for a busy audience. And then lastly, also with these, anytime you can sketch out your story first on paper or a whiteboard can always help you quickly identify problems with the sequence or where gaps might exist that you need to fill. And one of the most important elements of data storytelling is choosing an effective visual. So what I've put on the screen in front of you is a Tableau public visual dashboard called Visual Vocabulary. This is super helpful for anybody who is interested in showing a specific relationship between data points, but maybe isn't really sure what the best visualization type would be for what they're trying to show. For example, if you on Tableau Public, you can click into like one of these cards, like change over time, and it will produce a number of different visualizations that you can use to illustrate change over time. And so depending on what your story is and what outcome or conclusion you want your end users to come to, you can begin to design based on, well, one, what data you have, and what structure it's in, and two, like how you want to present this so that it makes the most sense for the end users, as well as like inspires them to do whatever it is you want them to do. But it doesn't just stop there. The eye does not see whole panoramas at once, so it's important to focus on your audience's attention. We view the world around us in small chunks, and we put the pieces back together to really form a complete picture. Another valuable thing to be thinking about is the pattern that our eyes travel when we look at graphics. Oh, sorry, went too far. We tend to move in a Z shape, starting from the upper left, moving to the right, and then a zigzag down. And so why am I bringing this up? Because you want to be keeping this in mind when you're putting your dashboards together. When we read graphics, right, it moves from that left to right, diagonal, and then right again, in the same way that we would be typically reading a book. And so it's always important generally to start with visualizations or dashboards on the top left that are the most important or the most inspiring to get into the visualization, and then kind of build around it in that fashion. And I thought when it comes to dashboarding, it might be nice to just sort of lay out some common examples. So we've got three here. We've got the F example, the Z example, and this is what we're just gonna call this the 2 example. So F examples are really great for when you're comparing 2 metrics. Visualizations are placed like right next to each other. The users can scan like left to right to compare information, and any filtering applied to one viz can very easily be reflected in the other. For the Z, this applies a top-level scan of the page. Summary information can sit there at the top. Supporting vizzes can occupy the full width of the content area, and then any actions can filter the more detailed phases or panes at the bottom and the right. And then the one on the right, this 2 example, this is also useful for comparing 2 metrics as well, and it really kind of removes some fluff so that you really just focus on the 2 assets at hand. Okay, so I wanted to sort of round this out a little bit by, mentioning what makes a good dashboard. Typically, we like to pass the 5-second rule, where within 5 seconds, I should be able to discern what the core message of the dashboard is. I should at that point either be inspired to continue looking or inspired to ask my own questions if it doesn't answer everything I need. Hopefully it will answer a set of questions, but not all of them. No dashboard can answer all of the questions, right? And the point is all of dashboards hopefully answer 80% of them, but then inspire us to ask 20% more that continue to just run with that analytical flow. A good dashboard has interactivity. You don't always need a ton. Some of the ones that I've created have maybe a simple filter, just hovering over and getting tooltip information before. So it doesn't have to be a ton. It just has to inspire and sort of direct the end user. A good dashboard typically has a simple targeted color scheme, just because more color is usually less effective. So you want to keep it pretty nailed down. Now, this one was given to me as a suggestion. I don't know that I necessarily believe that 5 worksheets or less is a good dashboard. I think this is very context dependent. I've seen a number of sales dashboards or executive overview dashboards, if you will. And if there are 5 KPIs on it, that's 5 worksheets on their own. So this is a little debatable, but I think the reason this is here kind of boils down to performance, because the more worksheets and the more visualizations that you include in a particular dashboard, the more inherent performance problems can occur, and it becomes a lot more to maintain. Clear use of text for direction. You can see here that there's a ton of text in this particular dashboard. And so it sort of allows the end user to know how to interact with things. And if you don't want to clog up a dashboard with text, it's also always helpful to have a little information button in the top that end users can hover over to learn how to interact with a dashboard. I think for us that are creators and designers of dashboards, it is very, very easy to just connect to data, start dragging and dropping, maybe apply some color and then just publish it up for consumption without really beginning with thinking of the end user and what questions they need to ask and how they're going to use that information to, do their job or run their business. So I think the clear use of text for direction and sort of beginning with that end user in mind is always the best place to go. And then I think it has to have a natural flow to it, right? I don't want to be going from visualization to visualization and asking myself, like, where's the connection or where is, the relevancy between all of them. So it has to have a natural flow. And then I thought I would just kind of round out with this quote: "The greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see," by John Touquet, who is a data visualization pioneer and mathematician. So I know I probably went through that a little fast. I think I probably felt a little, not a little rushed, but because of the audio issues. But I want to make sure that I say thank you for being Salesforce customers. Thank you for being Tableau customers and being here today. And I would love to open the floor for questions, or if we need to revisit any of the concepts or topics I mentioned, I'm happy to do that too. So the floor is yours, Dana and Steve, to direct this how you would like.
Thank you, Zemo. We appreciate it. Let's, Dana, how do you want to do Q&A? Do you have a queue going?
Yeah, there's no.
Okay. Well, we can start. I mean, I've got some probing questions that we can maybe start with. Zemo, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on, when you're standing up a dashboard to give a business user context, quickly? What about creating like a tab, a specific tab within the dashboard that kind of outlines the key KPIs and things like that, where you can kind of lay the foundational background of what they're going to glean from the dashboard? I mean, how important is that in creating something? Or do you feel like it's more important to just, make the dashboard simple from the beginning so it doesn't need a appendix slide or something like that? Anyway, does that make sense?
It does, and I think there's room for both, right? KPI dashboards are as a tale as old as time. And I think they have a ton of relevancy because sometimes you just need to know that like the number is above or below, right? And because KPIs, as simple as they can be, like do inform business decisions. If you see sales targets are down or sales numbers are down, you're gonna that is a simple thing that says, okay, what's the next best action to get sales numbers back up? So I think KPIs do have a relevancy there. And I certainly think that executive overview dashboards have a relevancy too. When it comes to an appendix or sort of a intro slide in dashboards, I think that can be super helpful, especially if you are introducing dashboards to an audience who maybe isn't super technical, is wary of getting into Tableau, maybe if they have trust or adoption issues. I am always an advocate for more instruction or more communication about what they're seeing or how they should interact with it than less, because if I put a dashboard in front of you, executive overview, KPIs, or even something super complicated, if you don't know what you're looking at, if you don't know how to interact with it, if you don't know where to click or what to hover over or how to use it to do your business, then what good is the dashboard?
Yeah, exactly. Good point. To the group here, I mean, are there any questions, or are there any things that you wanted to cover? Any questions? Any things that maybe you've run into that limit maybe your business users from consuming content, or anything? I know it's kind of a broad question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kind of on your last comment about making sure that there's enough kind of directive information. You talked about the little eye with a circle around it, a little info button. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about that and what the action is on that, because just in my use of Tableau, it wasn't clear to me what action that button would do on the dash.
Yeah, let me see if I have one saved in my Tableau public. I'm going to go a little ad hoc here. So if it takes me a second to load a page, bear with me. But let's see if we can find one.
And for the group here, Tableau Public is like our YouTube of Tableau Vises. So I use this all the time. When someone asks me a question about, hey, can we do this? I'll go on Tableau Public and inevitably someone's done it, maybe in a different line of business. And it just gets you thinking about, you know, how other people are trying to tackle that use case. And then oftentimes you can download the underlying tables, so you can actually plug in your own data, or you can just use it as a jumping off point to build your own operational dashboards.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of like reverse engineering. A little bit of a backstory. I did like a data science boot camp a couple years ago and learned a little bit about Python and you know, machine learning and AI and the capabilities. And I found that when it came to learning, you know, Python, it was a lot easier for me to like deconstruct code than it was to just build code net new. And so the same applies for Tableau for me. There are some things that just don't come easily to me despite being here for 3 years. And so being able to like take a dashboard like this and just download it and reverse engineer how they created a bar chart or did this like, you know, color coding or whatever is like super helpful. But to answer the initial question, you can use these as like little icons that when you hover over them will like just provide instructions or context, because this amount of text in a box is probably not something that you want to take up like all of this valuable screen real estate. And so end users will just include little icons like this, and maybe it's something like an environmental impact category or, you know, a health impact category. So you're not limited to just like an eye, but like if there are icons or jargon or things that you use internally to indicate like where to go for help, you could use them here. For example, we have a system internally at Salesforce that we call Concierge, which is kind of like our you know, help desk or our like, you know, claim submitter. And there have been dashboards that have like a little concierge icon that I can click on that take me directly to like that article where I can submit a ticket. So there's a lot of use cases for these on dashboards.
Just a tooltip.
You know, so that's a shape in the marks card.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Does everyone here know how to create tooltips? Yeah, deliver tooltips. Okay. All right.
I was gonna
I see a question here, Zemo, from Michael. It looks like they're both from Michael. Are they the same or different? Yeah, so Michael wants to know, and you might be able to read these yourself, Zemo, if you open up the chat. But Michael Lane wants to know, what resource guides does Tableau have for data storytelling? You know, making dashboards more inviting, summarizing, you know, what a case management project was about. And it looks like his other questions about resources.
can you repeat the first question one more time? I was trying to find it in the chat, but I don't think I can find it.
Oh, maybe, yeah. So his question was, what resources or guides does Tableau have for data storytelling? He says a coworker of his is making their overview dashboard more inviting, and wants to summarize case management product was about. He was hoping for tips of descriptions for overview page or how to interact with the dashboard.
You know, so when I hear this question or when I read it back, there are so many places my mind goes. But when I see like overview page or like how to interact with the dashboard, I honestly think about, let me move that little text box, like Tableau landing pages. I'm not sure if you all have heard of them before, but they are essentially, they look like web pages, but they are structured and built in Tableau in a way that produce an experience where there's just like so many different ways you can analyze data. And I know that I have one, I just have to find it. Yeah, here we go. So a couple years ago, there was a DC Tug, and they were doing landing pages in Tableau, where this would essentially be, you know, Caesar's Superstore, welcome to the, you know, the order reports, and you would have the ability to do like searches or reports, like, and this is built all in Tableau. let me see if I can, is there an example? Like a finance landing page, right? So you here, this is like DC Tech Finance about all those things, report one, like you could interact with these if you wanted, go to the data source, begin using the dashboards. I think this might be an image, but this is how people have used them before too, right? Where it's saying, hey, welcome here. Here's what data and what dashboards are going to be present. Here's how you can interact with them, and then you could navigate to them and they would act like different pages, but in reality, they would just be like different tabs in a workbook. Is this kind of what you meant, Michael?
We'll give him some time to reply. I think he's on virtually.
For sure.
Thank you for that, Zemo. Anyone else here have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question. You speak about data in this presentation really well, like you're not getting too far in the weeds. Presenting the dashboards verbally is one thing too. Do you have any resources when speaking about data, how to speak about it in a way that is user-friendly?
I heard a term when I was in that data science boot camp called Eli 5, explain it like I'm 5. And honestly, it has been one of the most revisited concepts in my mind when I am talking about data, because I think depending on who you're talking to, like sometimes imposter syndrome gets to me and I'm like, okay, like, am I technical enough to talk about this? Do I have like the expertise to really like own like what I'm saying? And I often find myself like pulling it down several layers and making it just very relatable as much as possible, because it then becomes universal. And I hope that like by using language like that to talk about data, it also makes other people who might feel imposter syndrome feel like they can understand technical concepts in a really easy way. So I really, as much as I can, just try to explain it like I would explain it to my 5-year-old niece.
Well, good answer. Yeah, well said, Zemo. Another thing, if I could add to that, I think as we all work in our various lines of business and our various careers, when you're an analyst and you might not be a domain expert who understands the ins and outs of every single data set and what each KPI means and what signals you need to tune into, I feel like it's really important for you to have, that bat line, that bat channel that you can open up the phone and call a line of business leader who you're trying to do an analytics dashboard for and really get ownership from them so that you can help tell their story, make sure you're telling the right story, make sure what you're delivering them is what they want. That way you're not essentially just, swimming in someone else's data and trying to make sense of it. So I'm not sure if everyone has that issue, but I think just cross collaboration between organizations and making sure you feel comfortable asking the questions and making sure your leadership gives you access to those people so that you can deliver the results that they're hoping for.
100%. Yeah, I think we've also seen a lot of efforts on Tableau and Salesforce's part to like know who owns content, like know who owns the dashboard, know who like owns like the data integrity and authenticity. So like when we have questions about something, we can immediately go like to the directly responsible individual instead of like having to like, go through 15 Slack channels to figure out who that person is. I feel like that's been something that we've made a lot of strides into, which has been super helpful. Yeah. Great questions. And I saw Michael had another question in the chat about resources or guides for formatting dashboards and providing great layouts. So you can actually find some of those even on Tableau Public. I think sometimes you figuring out how you want data to be laid out can be a cumbersome, process. Especially as a designer, like I definitely love to take my time, but sometimes when I'm just trying to like, do the thing like and produce the results, having some of these like Tableau dashboard layout templates are just super easy for being able to like get answers to the people who need them. And then if this layout doesn't work, I can like revisit that when I do have more time to design. And I think that would probably be a big recommendation is dashboarding should not be like a one and done. Like dashboarding should be iterative. It should take time. It should answer the questions. You should get feedback from your end users. What works? What do they not use? Like what's overwhelming? What do they love? And then like continue to like iterate on it and grow. There have been some dashboards that I've probably made 5 different revisions to and completely changed everything because of the feedback from end users.
Thank you. Thank you, Zemo. I have a question about, contextually, when you sit down to create a dashboard and you're trying to figure out, what is the thought process you go through when you're trying to deliver stand up a new dashboard for, a business unit? How much time do you devote to really understanding who the business user is, what they're trying to achieve? Is there a science or an art to flexing that muscle and becoming better at understanding your audience in the context of what you're trying to put together?
I think so. I think there is an art to it. And I think there's also a level of skill that you obtain and that you sort of just kind of know how to run with. But for example, I mean, there are several business units, several people I have created dashboards for, and I haven't known any of that, right? Where I've just I've been tasked with the project. I've opened Tableau and then just like stared there for 30 minutes before I'm like, okay, what am I actually like gonna do to answer this question? And that's, I think, where that iteration comes into play. I, to the best of my ability with the time given and the resources given, answer the question. And then I take it back and I say, hey, I don't know your business unit because I work in solution engineering, not in, marketing, not in product management, things like that. And I, by virtue, don't 100% know what you're looking for outside of like answering the specific question. So can you help me understand, like, why is this important? Like, what is this helping you do? And if they can't elaborate or provide the feedback or the answers that I need, then I can't continue to iterate and I can't like anticipate in the future how to solve their problems with dashboards. Like, for example, I bartend and serve tables at this bar part-time. If my manager at the restaurant or bar came to me and said, hey, I'd like you to make me a dashboard, like going over like inventory and profit margins and all those things, I would know like how to build that dashboard like from the ground up and not even bat an eye, because I've been in that industry and in that kind of job for so long that I just instinctively understand a lot of different facets of how restaurants and bars work together. But like, even though I've been in tech for 3 years, I don't know how like the finances or of like subscription models or like product management or even like managing business technology and assets like work. So if I have to make dashboards for those, departments, it's a little bit harder for me. But I think there's a skill that you can develop the more that you do it with specific business units or segments.
Awesome. Zemo, thank you. I think all of the online questions have been answered. Michael says thank you. And any other questions here on site?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead. AJ, go ahead.
Hey Zemo, thanks for that presentation. It was super helpful. So I was just wondering, like, my team's kind of going back and forth. Like, we each have our preferred tools for visualization. So background, we work with like kind of managing credit portfolios and monitoring their health and making decisions based on like analytics and visualization and all that good stuff. And so you mentioned that you had worked with Python a little bit. So to you, what are the strengths and weaknesses of using a specialized tool like Tableau versus using an open source scripted language like Python versus using something like Excel? Where do you find the specific use cases for Tableau are stronger than other open source tools?
That's a really great question. And I think they all have their own safe swimming lanes, right? Tableau is and always has been since 2003 a visual processing application for data, right? We are taking data, we are ingesting it and producing visualizations through our visual query language. And Tableau's strength, I think, has been in its ease of use for people who have no technical ability or a limited technical ability rather, to adopt it and run with it and be able to upskill and uplevel themselves. Python, I think, is a bit harder for the common person to just pick up and run with, because there's a lot of concepts, there's a lot of practice and like learning that really has to go on there that I think takes more time than dragging and dropping. And I think dragging and dropping is generally just more of a fun experience than somebody who wants to sit and like think through like, okay, how do I write a function? How do I get that function to do what I want it to do? So I think there are safe swimming lanes for both of them. And we do integrate with Python. So there is several use cases for leveraging those machine learning libraries within our application. I think it just boils down to, is your audience technical? Can they use Python themselves? Do they need self-service? How do you pick a tool that not only answers your questions, your business questions in the best way, but when you put the answers to those business questions in front of the people who use them to make decisions, like if they need to know Python, are they going to come back to you, or are they just going to like take that decision and run with it? Or if you give them a tool like Tableau that's visualizing all that data and then they can drag and drop themselves to answer any ad hoc questions, I think there's a clear delineator there around like the type of individual as well. So I'm not sure if I 100% answered that question, but I think they exist separately for different reasons, but we also have integrations for them for specific reasons.
It's a little off topic, but who's your Mario Kart character?
Yeah, great question. That honestly the best question that's been asked so far. My Mario Kart character is light blue shy guy, always.
God, we should play.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I not to brag, but to brag, I have gold trophies and 3 stars on every single track, like the set of tracks, except for I think 3 or 4 of them on the 200cc. So like I'm up there. I'm good.
Oh
We
man,
can go. I'll get your information.
I'm not keeping you busy enough, Zemo. I love it. No, good stuff.
Sorry.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, and good question. All right. So with that, I mean, we are at time for the presentation. Dana, anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending and to let them know that we are planning on having Hawaii Tableau user groups quarterly. So stay tuned for the next one. Usually the way I communicate that is through the Hawaii Tableau user group page on LinkedIn. And then we've actually been kind of scheming in the background about potentially having an Iron Viz competition. For those of you who are a little less familiar with Tableau, it's basically you create an Iron Viz, like it's a competition where you create a very powerful data visualization, and then we would have you present on it. So you would need to use non-proprietary data, but we're still kind of working out how we want to do it and how, what we want to do exactly. But I think it's important not to limit the creativity that everybody has collectively and brings to the table. So stay tuned for announcements on the Hawaii Tableau user group page for that as well. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you guys, and I'm sure Zemo and Steve, we all appreciate you guys attending today. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish I could have been there in person.
we wish we could have had you.
Next time.
Next time. Thank you, Zemo. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining virtually. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you've got questions. Maybe there's some things that you want to cover more off topic. Send Dana, myself, an email, and we can schedule some time. So thank you, everyone.